Well, our gospel lesson today comes from the Gospel of Mark, the 4th chapter. I'll just read a very few verses, which is really one of the reasons I didn't have Doc read that whole chapter in Revelation, because it's not really fair when the liturgist reads 32 verses and then the pastor steps up and reads 5, because people start to notice that after a while. So I'll give them a break for a couple of weeks. Mark chapter 4, beginning in verse 21, I'll read through verse 25. Jesus said this. Jesus said to them, "Do you bring in a lamp to put it under a bowl or a bed? Instead, don't you put it on its stand? For whatever is hidden is meant to be disclosed, and whatever is concealed is meant to be brought out into the open. If anyone has ears to hear, let him hear. Consider carefully what you hear," he continued. "With the measure you use, it will be measured to you, and even more. Whoever has will be given more. Whoever does not have, even what they have, will be taken from them." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, this seemed like an easy summer sermon series, easier to do than to say, oh, let's do some of the old songs that so many of us grew up with and many of our kids and grandkids don't know. And we'll do them for the children's lesson, and then I'll base the sermon on the ideas in that song. And it sounded like a really great idea, and for whatever reason for this week, it's been a terrible idea, including the fact that I left out the most important verse, and nobody stopped me. It's the problem with being of a certain age and having gray hair. They assume, oh, well, he didn't sing that verse on purpose. I didn't sing that verse because I'm of a certain age with gray hair. I forgot the hide it under a bushel. No, I'm going to let it shine. Most important verse in the whole thing, other than this little light of mine. Can't believe it. Hide it under a bushel, because it comes from this verse, from this passage. When you get to this collection of ideas, because they're almost parables, they're more ideas and images and metaphors than anything else, you can have your choice in the Gospels. I could have read it from Matthew, and I could have read it from Luke, and I could have read it from Mark, and chose Mark, of course. One of my favorite books, I've got the coolest book in the world, and it would interest very few of you. Got this really cool book that it's a synopsis of the Gospels, and if one of the Gospel writers talks about something and any of the other Gospel writers also includes that story, then you put it together. So, for instance, ideas, parables about the light, I've got 4 columns here for Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and then this passage we're looking at, including the bushel measure and the measure you use, well, only I've got columns for Matthew, Mark, and Luke, but it's got all of the same words put about in the same place. And that is actually part of my problem. I had too many choices. I wanted to do the bushel idea because of this little light of mine, assuming I'd remember to sing about the hide it under a bushel. No, I'm going to let it shine. Forgot that. But in choosing Mark and having Debbie print up the bulletin for Mark, I ended up putting myself in a corner that is going to be hard to get out of. Because when Mark has Jesus tell us these words, I mean, several of the gospel writers have it, so Jesus absolutely said them, but he said them in different ways at different times. And so when Mark's putting together his good news, his gospel, this is what Jesus said, and this is what you need to know about Jesus so that you can know he is the Son of God and you can believe in him, and this is what you most need to know. When he told it, he's making sure he gets across a different idea of Jesus than perhaps in Matthew or in Luke. And of course, John, the Gospel of John, the light of the world. The light comes into the world and the darkness has not overcome it, has not understood it. So, here I am in Mark. Liked the measure you use. I liked that idea. I thought it was a little bit challenging. This is going to be great. And now I've backed myself into a corner. Among other reasons, because even with these great new Bibles we've got in your pews, and I encourage you to use them, and I'm not just having Doc read Revelation, so I make sure you turn to the back as well as to the middle, and we'll do Genesis along the way. But this is a way for us to have the same translation in front of us if you want to look on, and hopefully there will be times that will be important to look on. But I'm also being influenced not just by our new Bibles and not just choosing Mark, but also the fact that 2 weeks ago I was reading the ordination exams, which I told you about. And we were studying the Gospel of John, told you about that as well. And it meant that I had to look at John, the first chapter, in the Greek. And that got me thinking about things. And so I looked at some other people for this passage in Mark, and I looked at how it looked in the Greek. And then I found the coolest thing, which also means, this little light of mine, I picked the wrong gospel. This little light of mine, of course, the song is that somehow we are lights in this world. Just as Jesus is the light of the world, so we who are Jesus followers also ought to be shining God's light in the world. And that's a very important thing. And we will talk about that. And it's not what Jesus is talking about here in the Gospel of Mark. Because even though we've got these cool new Bibles with it, and it's a great translation, I like it a lot, I don't know if anybody translates this the way that it reads, very simply and easily in Greek. I'll give you a feel for it. Jesus said to them, see, it's a little bit of a funny construction too, but let me see if I can get it right. Jesus said, the light doesn't come into the room to be put under a bowl or under a bench. The light doesn't come in to do that, right? And of course you're supposed to answer, no, the light would never come in to be then put under a bowl or under a bench or under a bed. But that's a weird way of saying things. He said the light comes. Well, the light never comes. The sun comes and light comes in, but a lamp doesn't just come. You have to bring in a lamp, right? And so every translation you will see is you don't bring in a lamp in order to put it under a bowl or hide it under a bed. Almost every translation will have some version of that. It's not what Mark remembers Jesus saying, or at least what Peter told Mark. That's another discussion for another time. The way that Mark has Jesus say this is Jesus says, the lamp doesn't come in order to be put under a bowl or in a bed. Well, if the lamp is coming and not being brought in, then we're talking about something different than just a simple oil lamp or a clay pot that's filled with oil that's got a wick and you'd light it and it doesn't cast a whole lot of light unless you're in a place that has no electricity and it's expensive to buy oil, and then you'll find that one little tiny lamp can light up a room just fine so long as you don't have to look at too much or read very many things. The lamp comes, and it doesn't come to be hidden. That is a very interesting idea. Jesus is not talking about a lamp that somebody would bring. He's talking about a lamp coming of its own, and that changes everything. One important thing, but complicated, because it means we're not really talking about us anymore. We can't really talk about this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Now we're talking about another light, a greater light, a light that can come into a room, not just a sun that dawns and not those sorts of things, but a lamp that can bring itself into the world, into a situation. But that helps with this other bit. For whatever is hidden is meant to be disclosed, and whatever is concealed is meant to be brought out into the open. And if you're thinking about bringing lamps into a room, well, of course, whatever is hidden, then you can find it. And whatever is concealed, now we can see by the light of the lamp, and not really what Jesus has in mind at all. He's talking about a mystery, and particularly a biblical mystery, which is a loaded term. And it means something once hidden, now revealed. Something once secret, but never meant to be secret so a few people would know, but something that we don't understand, and then later, somewhere down the road, we will understand. And sometimes we do understand, but mostly it's a down the road thing. Consider carefully what you hear, he continued. With the measure you use, it will be measured to you, and even more. And I love that idea too, this idea of measuring. And the other place that Jesus talks about the measure you use is very clear what he's talking about. And it's slightly less clear here, so I want to tell you about that too. Because in the end, it's a really important thing. What Jesus says in a way that's slightly confusing is a really important thing for us to understand. And how we understand it will determine a lot of things about not only our life here, but our life in the world to come. At least that's the way I think that Mark wants us to understand what Jesus is talking about. The measure is a strange idea. The measure is an idea of hearing and understanding and contemplating, and we'll talk about that. So first, let me give you two really helpful, true, and biblical, useful lessons that this passage is probably not teaching. But they're biblical, and they're true, and I think they're useful. One is the let your light shine. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. As long as we keep in mind a couple of things. One, we are not the true light. We are not the light that was coming into the world. So the best way to think of it, as I've told you before, is we are not the sun. Okay, in this situation. So the light that we have is not our own light that comes from within us and we can just shine it out there in the world the way the sun generates light and energy and all that sorts of thing. We're not even stars of any kind, really. At best, we're the moon. And the moon can really shine bright. And the homework I was supposed to do this week was to find out why back in July that great big beautiful full moon was called the supermoon. And I never looked it up. I just thought it was a great phrase and I latched onto it. And the night of Wendy's brother's wedding, the supermoon was rising. I'm going to have to tell you the whole story, and I don't want to. It was at the reception, and at this wonderful reception venue, there are these nice little brick steps that go down from the house into the garden, and there's a little railroad ties on either side of the steps, and in the dark, when the supermoon's rising, it looks like the railroad ties go all the way out and then make a little planting area, and the steps go down right next to it. As it turns out, the railroad ties also step down. But if you're looking at the moon and realizing it's coming up, and the photographer's right close to you, and the bride and groom are there, and you want to get people's attention, you say, look, there's the supermoon. It's best to also look down, because I almost fell right off the steps. I grabbed a bush on the way around, leg flailing in the air, and I got everybody's attention, which was good. So we saw the supermoon coming up. A bunch of us tried to take pictures of it. Didn't work at all. Wendy's cousin took a picture of the bride and groom with the supermoon rising above them, and it worked wonderfully. At best, we are the moon. The moon doesn't shine of its own, but the moon can cast an awfully bright light because it's reflecting the light of the sun, right? That is the sort of light that we have. Light that shines on us so that it can shine to others. The really true, helpful, useful lesson, I think, is we are supposed to let our light shine in this world because we are followers of the light of the world. And if I'd picked Matthew and the Sermon on the Mount, it'd be easy to preach. Because Matthew goes on to have Jesus say, when he's recounting Jesus' long sermon, he records that Jesus said, "So let your light so shine before all people that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven." And that's exactly it. In any way in which we are the light, in any way in which we are shining or reflecting God's light in the world, it is all supposed to eventually redound to God's glory. It is supposed to bring God glory. The way that our light shines in this world is by doing good works, doing good things, doing Jesus-like things, so that people look at us and they go, oh, that's a great thing, but it's not about us, it's about God. And God's glory is reflected, shown into this world in such a way that people can give God glory for the good things that we do. Because we're children of God and we're followers of Jesus. Helpful lesson number 1. So let your light shine. Not what Jesus meant here, but he says it in another place, so I'll tell you. The other thing has to do with this measure you use in verse 24, so it will be measured to you. And Mark, he says, and even more. But the other places that I remember this measure being used, it has to do with forgiveness and forbearance and how we judge one another and how we deal with one another. So your second true and useful and biblical lesson that this passage is not teaching is that use a really big scoop. Use a really big measure. We had to talk this morning about what a bushel was. Wendy wasn't sure Christian knew what a bushel was, but he's seen us buy a bushel of this and a bushel of that at the farmer's market. He knew immediately what a bushel was. And that is actually the word that Jesus uses here. You don't hide it under a bushel bowl, and with the measure or bushel, that's the word he uses, with the bushel that you use, it will be measured to you. Later on, it was just a general term, with the measure. So think of it as a big scoop. And when you're thinking about how you deal with people, should I forgive this person? Should I put up with this person? Should I love this person? Should I show grace to this person? Should I show mercy to this person? Use a really big measure, because that's the one that will be given to you. I want to be so forgiving, so gracious, so merciful, so forbearing that God will use that same measure of forbearance, grace, mercy, etc. with me. And I need a big scoop, because I'm going to need that much grace and mercy and forgiveness and forbearance. So 1, let your light shine so that people can see that you're a child of God, a follower of Jesus, and so give glory to God. 2, show mercy and forgive and forbear, because the way in which you deal with others, and not just the people that are easy to forgive and put up with, but even the hard ones, the way in which we do that is the way in which God will be merciful, forgiving, forbearing with us. Measure with a big scoop so you may receive with a big scoop. And that actually is a good segue into what Jesus really is talking about. With the measure you use, it will be measured to you, and even more. Verse 25, whoever has will be given more. Whoever does not have, even what they have, will be taken from them. One of the hardest sayings of Jesus in the Bible. I first learned about this verse, not Mark's version, Luke's version, Luke chapter 8, when I was taking organic chemistry, which was not the most pleasant experience of my life. It did not go well. But I will forever remember Pelham Wilder, the professor, famous, written the text that we were using, this dignified, brilliant man that I mostly didn't understand. But I remember this. He said, and we were talking about electrons, and it just was tough. But he said, this is the rule. It's from Luke chapter 8. Whoever has will be given more, and whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken away. And it had to do with when two atoms come together, whoever's got more electrons steals the ones from the other, and the one who didn't have very many, even what they have is taken away. That may be about the extent of organic chemistry that I learned that semester. It is a hard saying of Jesus. Who wants the people who are already rich to have more, and those who don't have very much even have the little bit taken away from them that they have? And that sounds like a description of the world as we know it now, because it is the world as we know it now, and most of the world anyway, and not what Jesus meant. So let's see if we can get back to what Jesus it really is talking about the light, and then about the measure, and then we'll be done. The lamp doesn't come in order to be put under a bowl or put under a bed. The lamp comes in order to shine its light. Jesus is talking about a mystery, or what once was a mystery, once hidden, once revealed, and now is becoming known. This is Jesus early on in the Gospel of Mark starting to step out. The same Jesus who usually tells the demons, don't say anything about who I am. They say, this is the Son of God. He says, be quiet. He heals people and says, don't tell them, exactly what I've done for you or who it is that's done this for you. But this is one of the ways in which Jesus shows we're about to unfold something that is unimaginable, unexpected in so many ways, even though we should have been prepared for it. This is like the light peeking over the horizon at the beginning of the day. It was cloudy this morning when the light was peeking over the horizon, so I don't have a good story about that from today, but I can tell it in reverse. Friday night, the Fish Youth Group was at Knoebels, and we had the reverse happen, right? So off to the east, the night was just black and dark, and right above us, it was a dark blue, and right over the mountain, you could see a little bit of light. And Christian noticed this as he and I were waiting in line, because we did a lot of that on Friday, waiting in line for a ride, and he picked up on the fact that the sky was a different color. Well, this is this in reverse. Just as the sun is about to peek over the horizon, this is something that's unfolding, and it's a mystery about to be revealed. And though I love the passage from Revelation, it's one of the reasons I had Doc read it, right? So in this temple, in this city, there is no temple. There ought to be a temple. Where do you worship God? The idea is you worship God everywhere. And then there's no light and no lamp in the temple because it doesn't need it, because the Lord Himself will be the light. The light is shining. Whatever is hidden is meant to be disclosed. Whatever is concealed is meant to be brought out into the open. And this is a revealing of the mystery. And so, I should have picked Romans 16 or Colossians 1, which talks about the mystery once hidden for long ages, now made known. And that is the good news of Jesus Christ. God was never meant to be a mystery that is unknowable. God was never meant to be a power far off that we did not know and did not understand, and somehow all these things happened to us. God always intended to reveal Himself to us, and He does that in Jesus Christ. What once was a mystery, what once was hidden, is now revealed. He's not talking about people hiding things and the secret comes out. He's not talking about people lying and then the truth finally will out. That's not what He's talking. He's talking about Himself. He is the lamp that comes into the world on its own. The lamp that comes into the room and shines everywhere. And what is hidden is the mystery and plan of God, the plan of salvation for the world and for you and for me, made personal in Jesus Christ. Whatever is concealed is meant to be brought out into the open. Not everybody understood, certainly for long ages past, that there was this little group of people. They come from the line of Abraham, and in some way their God is with them. There is this no longer tiny group of people, but a great big group of people down in Egypt, and they are being oppressed, and they are enslaved, and they are persecuted, and finally they go out first into the wilderness, finally into the promised land, and their God is with them. Not just them, but always the idea was that this would go out to the whole world, that the whole world would know that there is a God of all power and a God of love, and a God at work in this world and in this universe, and that God was always intending to make Himself known to the whole world. If anyone has ears to hear, let them hear. That's a big phrase drawn from the prophets. This is a pay attention, watch what I'm saying, listen to what I'm saying, consider carefully what you hear. He goes on to say in verse 24, this is the good stuff. What once we could not know, what once we had not experienced, what once we would never understand is now being revealed to us in Jesus Christ. One day it will be clear for the whole world to know that this Jesus, this Christ, is God and Savior and Lord of all things. And it's coming out into the open. First important thing. Consider carefully, though, what you hear. Pay close and careful attention to what Jesus is saying, to Him and to His words. With the measure you use, it will be measured to you and even more. And one of the most compelling people that has written on Mark said, what he's talking about, the measure here is not the whole forgiveness, mercy, grace, forbearance. That's important in another place, exactly what Jesus is saying. And here, he's saying this measure that you use is your measure of hearing Jesus' words, your measure of seeking to understand those words, your measure of contemplating and meditating on the words and the actions and the life of Jesus so that we can receive from Him. The measure you use is the scoop that you use to bring in all that God has told us about Himself in Jesus Christ. Understanding, hearing, meditating, receiving, living out this life of faith. Because this is a strange thing. Whoever has will be given more. Those who are seeking the Lord Jesus Christ and seeking to understand Him, they will be given the answer. They will be have God revealed to them in Christ. Those who hear of this invitation and reject it, what little they know about Jesus, even that will be taken away. This is talking about the end of all time here. Deadly serious. Somehow, the more that we get now, the more that we will get then in the last day. The more that we seek God's face, the more that we pay attention to what Jesus says, the more we seek to understand who God is in Jesus Christ, then the more we will be given at the end of all time. Or as one person wrote, I love this, we will be given a salvation far richer than anyone can imagine. This is not a, skating in under the line at the last second, barely making it. This is coming in and being just overwhelmed with the blessings and mercy of God. What Jesus is talking about here is Himself and God's plan of salvation for you and for me, and how He can make it known, and how this is not just a plan we can understand, but is also a plan that we can live into, for we too are citizens of the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom that is coming, that has come in Jesus, and is spreading around the world. And He is promising us something incredibly rich. First, that what we once didn't understand, He wants to make known to us, and by the Holy Spirit enables us to understand. Because the Spirit doesn't just remind us of all that Jesus commanded, He does that. But He also leads us into faith, leads us into a life of rich and abundant faith and understanding. And with this measure that we use, and we come into this with curiosity and with enthusiasm, with energy, then He will reward that, not only now, but certainly in the world to come. The more we seek His face, the more we will see it. Not every day, not every minute, not all the time. Some of the greatest saints in history have known the dark night of the soul, have known a time when God seemed to be very far off, and they were seeking and could not find. But God brings us through the dark times and into the light. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you, and even more than you can imagine, expect, understand, so God will give to us. It's good news. And it's not good news about me as my light shining enough. It's good news about Jesus, who is the light of the world and shines enough, not only for me to see, but for us all to see that He is indeed Lord and God and King. Wants us to know Him, wants us to love Him, wants us to follow Him. And that way our light can shine. Will you please join me in prayer? Lord, shine your light on us, your light that enables us to understand and to follow. Shine your light on dark paths so that we may follow you. Shine your light into dark spaces so that we may have hope in you. Shine your light in such a way that it will reflect off of us, your children, so that the world may know that this plan of salvation is not just for a few of us, but it is an invitation that goes out to all. That in Jesus Christ there is life and life eternal. And in this world here and now, there is life abundant to be had if we will seek you with